Some detectives work cases. Tom Lange worked the cases that made Los Angeles history. OJ Simpson, the Wonderland Murders, serial killers hiding in plain sight. For decades, Lange walked into crime scenes that most people could never handle and saw details the public never fully understood. Kato and I have sat across from him multiple times on this show, and every single time he says something that stops the room. No cable news noise, no internet theories here today, just the view from inside the investigations. What detectives saw, what they missed, and what still doesn't sit right with Tom Lange. Today, we're opening up the files, the Tom Lange files.
You don't know what you have. We went to the front door. There's a light on, but nobody's answering. We got a couple of cars in the driveway. Something's going on. Somebody's in there, but nobody's answering. So in my mind, after leaving a crime scene with two victims, bloody victims, OJ Simpson lives here. There's talk that this is his estranged wife. Is he inside in the same type of condition? Is he alive or dead? Because nobody's responding to the front door. We've got a phone line that goes into the house. Nobody's picking up the phone. So we're saying, hey, we got a problem here. That's where the big contest came in about should they go over the fence, should they go over the wall. No, we could have gone to breakfast. No, of course not. There's a possibility you've got another victim inside the house, and it might be O.J. Simpson. So we had to get in there. Yeah. So we went over the wall, through the gate, front door, nobody's answering, so we go around the back, obviously. And we see, I believe, like 3 bungalows. And so we started knocking on doors. And the first one, I believe, was Kato. Yeah. And Simpson's daughter, Arnell, was in another one. So Furman, I think, knocked on Kato's door first. Yeah. And I knocked on Arnell's. And they both came out about the same time. Arnell, I think, came out first.
Yeah, I remember it's sort of a haze, and I hear the phone is not part of his phone is not connected, but I can hear through a wall. I kept thinking, am I dreaming? I hear this. You guys must have kept calling and ringing. I'm going, is this part of a dream? And then there's knocks at my door, and when I did open it, first I was in a haze. I mean, you saw me when I have no idea what's going on. I didn't even ask who you guys were. There was four, and I remember 4. And I said, come on in. And it was Phil Vanetter, yourself, Detective Phillips, remember what that name? Yeah. And Furman. Right. And you all came in my room, and Furman had asked me, what did you wear last night? Before anything else, what did you wear last? I showed him my clothes were hanging in a chair. He goes, where are your shoes? And I think you were in there. You guys looked at the bottom of my shoes, and then they took a flashlight, right? And I think what do you call the test that you?
That was for a nystagmus test to see if your eyeballs would jump a little bit. In other words, to see if you were in the influence of narcotics or something.
And this is 4:30 or 5 in the morning. The last thing
I think it's 5:30.
I'm not going to start double, asking questions. But we didn't need to do that.
Right.
Because this is like 5, it's 5:10 in the morning. You were obviously half asleep. I don't know why Furman did that, quite frankly, but he did. So
I did pass that test, right?
Yeah, you made it. Oh. You passed that one. I don't know about the others that followed, but you got that one. Well, in the back of my mind, he's got to be a possible suspect. I mean, it's still bleeding. You go back. This was, when we interviewed him, it was about 13 hours after the murders that occurred. We feel that it probably went down about 12:35 or so. I'm sorry, 10:35 or so at night. And so this is early the next afternoon. Still bleeding. He doesn't even have a Band-Aid on it. You want to make a record of that on the tape that we're doing. So I mentioned something. I said, I see your fingers bleeding. Maybe we can get a Band-Aid for that or something. And he just said, no, that's okay. It's fine. So we're looking at each other, and, maybe he's moved up a notch as a possible suspect, but you can't jump to conclusions here before you got the full story. And in that short interview, and it was a short interview for a reason, there were like a dozen inconsistencies in that short interview 3 different stories during that 32 minutes about how he cut his finger. And so we have to look a little closer at that.
32 was his number. Are you just saying that because of that? Or
No, it's 30.
Oh, 30.
Might have been 33. I'm going to say 32 because I like that.
Do you know,
This is Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. He goes,
Tom's
we'll
used
stop
to
at
it.
32. But here's a... Immediately, I become a detective when Tom talks. I'm thinking there's a cut in his finger. No one ever said if the gloves, did it have a slit in that finger? Did the glove actually have a cut hole in it?
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
There are 2 gloves, right hand, left hand.
Correct.
Okay, the left hand here. The right hand glove is at Rockingham. Left hand glove is at the scene. It did have some, but you can't line up the actual. I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
There were some cuts, but they wouldn't match up with the hand. That having been said, we believe that he lost the glove during a struggle. Mm-hmm. And the glove where it was found, the left glove, was found at the scene along with the other evidence right in the middle of the 2 bodies. So we think the glove obviously went off before the cut. Because the other glove, the Rockingham, of course, had blood of both victims and him. Again, my favorite expression, when all else fails, go with the evidence, okay? As far as the crime scene, you start at the crime scene and go through all the other nonsense. There's no other evidence to show anybody else was involved. One of the things at the crime scene that a lot of people aren't aware of is we collect blood. And before you collect blood, you don't just swab it up and put it in the beaker and walk away with it. You photograph it, you measure it, you look at the configuration of the blood. In this case, and in many cases, we have what's called cast off. If there's a knife involved, someone is swinging a knife blade around, stabbing, slashing, using it as a weapon. Blood is flying off of the blade. It's called cast off, and it strikes the ground in different ways. This tells a story. Well, on the Ron Goldman's feet, on the right foot, I believe it was, there is cast off on the sole. Obviously, that cast off struck the bottom of the sole while he was down. So he was down and out when the blood struck. There's a large globule that struck and tailed down. In other words, for the forces of gravity. It stood out because it was a larger globule of blood than all the other spatter around. So I got photographs of it and everything else. It was examined. Well, it turns out that blood was 2 persons involved in that blood. The blood involved blood from the globule involved blood from 2 victims. It was a mixture of blood from Brown and Ron Goldman. Mixture. What does that tell you? Cast off. 1 weapon. No other blood, no other footwear impressions or anything else. So you had 1 weapon because the blood was a mixture of both victims. That was corroborated by 1 set of footwear impressions in blood. No possible parts, this, that, the other. There was only 1 set of footwear impressions moving between the victims. And that cast off of blood, combination of both victims. That is evidence of 1 suspect and 1 weapon. The footwear impressions moving away from the scene, there's only 1 set. Everything here shows 1 suspect. Now, if you had somebody involved subsequently, well, A.C. Collins, I guess, because he drove his Bronco, maybe he's part of it too. I don't believe so. We spent quite a bit of time with A.C. I know there are people to this day believe that A.C. May have been involved somehow. Well, he was when he drove him away. I don't think he knew anything about it. There's no evidence to show that he did. Again, cops don't chase ghosts. They chase evidence. And it's all about the evidence in any case. Mm-hmm. And there's no other evidence to show anybody else. Well, that particular morning, I had been talking to Bob Shapiro, and the plan was to have OJ turn himself in at the Parker Center jail. So we were waiting down at the jail. I figured they'd be coming in at any time. And of course, they never showed. They were like, there had to be 7 or 8 helicopters circling Parker Center.
People were gathering around on San Pedro Street right outside the jail, wondering when he was going to show up. I called Shapiro again. He was at Bob Kardashian's home in Encino. And he had told me that, he was here just a little bit ago. He was talking to AC, and all of a sudden they're just gone. I said, where did he go? He says, I have no idea. I can't tell him what to do, something like this. He was at a loss for words. So that told me that he really didn't know that Simpson had planned to take off. And apparently he just did this on his own along with AC Cowlings. So I don't think Shapiro really knew what was going on at that particular point in time. And I really don't believe that he did know where he was going. Regardless, I called West LA Division and I had them set up a couple of black and white cars up to Kardashian's home to search the home, to see if they could talk to anybody, to get any information at all where Simpson might have gone to. And of course, that went nowhere. So I was pretty much set in the belief that when Simpson took off, he didn't tell anybody. He did leave a note, however, that we know. So this was kind of planned. Whether or not he was going to commit suicide, I mean, you could get an argument on that from anybody. Yes, no, who knows what he was going to do. I don't think he really knew what he was going to do one way or the other at the time. Okay, well, I was sitting there, and again, everybody was just mumbling and looking at the so-called pursuit, hopefully trying to think of a way out of this, or what are we going to do next type of thing, because we're not looking really, really good here. So I was taught many years ago someplace where there was a very bad situation going on, and I learned very young that sometimes you have to make a decision, period. Right, wrong, do not be indifferent. You have to make a decision under some circumstances. Results be damned. So I made the decision that I'm going to try to phone him because I knew that he had a mobile phone. I got a hold of Patty Jo Fairbanks at the DA's office, and we were talking, and she said she just happens to have his phone number. And I said, well, it probably means nothing. He's not going to pick up. Just give it to me. We'll try something. We've got to do something. So she gave me the number, and I dialed the phone. And there's no way, dialed, by the way, we used to dial. And there's no way he's going to pick up. Well, it rang twice, and he picked up. And it kind of caught me off guard. And I said, initially, OJ, this is Tom Lange. Need to talk to you. And we started to talk. And he was obviously under the influence of something, or very tired, or probably both. And at that moment, when I first talked to him, I didn't realize he had a gun. So I'm just trying to talk to him because in the back of my mind, I thought that, well, what is he going to do? It could be anything. Maybe he doesn't know what he's going to do. So I just started to talk to him about his kids, about this will all be over soon. Don't worry about it. Things have a tendency to work themselves out. Right now, you need to turn yourself in, all this type of stuff. And then all of a sudden, somebody kind of just whispered at me and said, he's got a gun. One of the sheriffs saw a gun. And so I'm thinking, well, now it's getting a little more complicated. Yeah, right. And then they said, oh, by the way, he's waving it around. So now I'm thinking, well, is he going to shoot himself, shoot AC, shoot back at the cops chasing him? I didn't know. Again, if you don't have an answer to something, try to engage him. You don't want to give this guy time to think. Yeah. So I wanted to engage him to think about anything except the gun. Yeah. And other than that, other than just getting rid of it and throwing it out. So now I was able to concentrate on the gun. Again, knowing it was probably real, loaded, and he might use it. So that was my only thought here. Yep. So with the gun in mind, I started talking again about his kids and everything. Well, at this point, somebody ran in with a tape recorder and hooked up my phone because the first conversation was recorded. So they got it hooked up, and then we continued to talk. And then I would lose him from time to time. I think I called him back 3 or 4 times. And each time he picked up, which in my mind was good. This means he wants to talk. Maybe we can get his mind off of the gun. Maybe he can get rid of the gun, because now everybody knows there's a gun. SWAT's en route to his home. We don't want this to get any more complicated than it is. So just concentrate on talking to him, get his mind off of anything else he may have, and then try to concentrate on that gun and get rid of the gun. That was the only thing we talked about all the way back. Because if he gets all the way back to Rockingham, and it was going to be dark probably at that time, and he steps out of that Bronco with a gun in hand, SWAT has snipers, and they would down him now. That would not be good at all.
Before OJ made Tom Lange a name, the whole country knew he had already spent years inside one of the darkest eras in Southern California homicide. The 70s and 80s, man, they weren't just violent. They were crawling with predators all over the place here. Freeways, alleys, cheap motels, downtown streets, beach cities. Ordinary places where people had no idea that they were moving around with these psychos. At times, there were multiple serial killers active in the exact same region, if you can believe that, and Lange was there for some of the worst of it. The Skid Row stabber, which he took down himself, and the toolbox killers. This is a case that's so sick, it's almost impossible to talk about the details of it.
These guys were so vicious as to videotape and audio torture these young kids, girls, after they kidnapped them. And there's one in particular, Bittaker and Norris. Norris would be driving this van, and Bittaker would be in the back of one of the victims. This was the last one, I believe, the fifth victim that they picked up in the San Fernando Valley, in the Northeast Valley. Things were getting a little hot down in the beach cities, obviously. Where these girls were getting snatched, and they were taping this torture of this young girl, and that was played in court. And the jury just went berserk. I mean, people were screaming and everything else, listening to this poor girl getting tortured before they killed her. This is what kind of animals these were.
Mm-hmm.
That level was pretty hard to match, but the closest thing that came to that would be this Randy Kraft. A couple of years later, down in the Orange County area also, and then up in L.A. But serial killers don't just go out and pick somebody up and kill them and dump them. A lot of times you have this torture business, and that kind of separates them to me. There's a special difference that raises it another level. I mean, if you're going to kill somebody, you're going to kill them, you get off on that, you get off on that. But to go out of your way to torture first and then document that torture on an audio tape.
And kids, they were
They
kids.
were young girls to go off, and it's hard to even imagine.
Well, and they would drive around with them for hours.
Yeah.
For hours, this would go on.
Right. I remember episode, Tom, that was your number one. We had the top 5 serial killers. That was one of the most effective, Tom. Back to that, you said also that they started getting bored with it, and they said they started looking to start nabbing boys.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting enough, during this time, they'd been arrested, Bittaker and Norris, and we'd had 3 or 4 other serial killings going at the same time, and one of them, Bob Souza, my old partner, was handling it. That was a freeway killer, and they hadn't identified him yet, but the MOs appeared to be similar, only one was girls and one was boys, so Bob wanted to interview Bittaker and Norris to see if he could get something. Now, they had a trial pending, so chances of them rolling over were 0-0.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Norris decided to talk, maybe because of his ego or whatever else. Bittaker wouldn't have anything to do with it. He was probably the more vicious of the two. So Bob sat down with Norris, and Norris kind of laid out their M.O., and Bob was familiar, wanted to become familiar with that because it was so similar to his. So they had a van that they had named some silly names. I forget the name of the thing that they named the van, but
we know it wasn't the Scooby-Doo van. It was a killer van.
Yeah, it's something like that. And anyway, they would go out and they would use this van, and that way they could pull up against close to a victim, open the sliding door and grab the victim and pull them in without anybody seeing anything.
Yeah.
So he looked at that as an MO, and it helped. And this guy Norris went along with it. Later on, when Bob made the arrest of the freeway killer, Bonin, all of these things seemed to fit. It's like anything else. It's like anybody else. I've talked to people who have killed before, and you could line 6 of them up here, and you wouldn't know that they'd harm anybody. They could turn it on, they could turn it off. Who knows what's going on between their ears? We all look for answers. Sometimes you don't have an answer. Everybody is different to one degree or another. Mm-hmm. And that's what a serial killer is. They can just turn it on and turn it off. They have no conscience. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They can pick their nose or cut somebody's head off. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you have to almost approach it. Like,
well, you do.
There is no answer, because how can you explain it? This is not black and white. You know what I mean?
I know one thing, though. If you're talking to somebody like that who has killed before, you don't bang your fist down and say, all right, you son of a bitch, I want it out of you, grab me and throw it against the wall. Never works.
Right.
It's all BS. Try to understand that, hey, I'm here to do a job. And the same with the Simpson thing. If you don't deal with somebody on their level with common sense, you're not going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. If your intention was to get evidence or get a statement, you got to kind of roll over and play the game.
What is the mood at Parker Center or just amongst fellow detectives? I mean, is it got the pressure to find these guys, and then the next day another body, and then there's like 3 or 4 serial killers working at the same time?
Yeah.
You know?
The biggest problem initially was communication, or better yet, lack of communication between different agencies. It's always been a problem, probably still is today, if you've got 3 or 4 different agencies involved with the same killer. Now, the killers know that. A lot of them realize that. We had people getting snatched from downtown from the beach cities. The beach cities, each beach city has their own policing agency. And so they didn't communicate with us. We had one case on the toolbox thing, this young girl that I discussed, who was picked up, and nobody was talking to each other. The same with the freeway killer. We had 3 different agencies involved. Nobody was talking to one another. The biggest problem we had was nobody got together and did anything about it. Now, I have to say that our guys did with John St. John, which is a very well-known old L.A. homicide cop, and Bob Souza were tasked with getting together with the L.A. sheriffs and a couple other agencies. Burbank and Glendale, I think, was involved during the Hillside and also during the freeway killers. People were finally beginning to talk. In one case, one of the Hillside killers, Bianchi, was being looked at as a serious suspect by LAPD, by the Orange County Sheriffs, and by also, I believe it was Burbank PD, but nobody knew it. Mm-hmm. So that was a lack of communication, which was the biggest problem we had at the time.
No big database that you could put all the evidence in, because, I mean, think about it. I mean, this is connecting dots. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
And with resources, with technology, with the advancements that you would have now, totally different world. But back then, and that's so frustrating, because just to communicate in general is tough. I mean, we're talking rotary phones. You know, there's no email, there's no texting, there's nothing like that. There's no GPS. And God, it's just like it would prolong everything. And I bet the killers knew that. They had an advantage.
That was one reason why there were probably so many. You couple that with the fact that hitchhiking was a big deal 30, 40 years ago. Nobody had cameras like they do today. Mm-hmm. The weather out here, the dump spots that you have, and that's what serial killers looked at. Mm-hmm. If you're going to snatch somebody, you got to know where to dump them, where it's pretty safe. You're not going to get caught. And obviously, they didn't for a long time. And one of those reasons was lack of communication, lack of follow-up. You didn't know what was going on maybe 2 miles down the street because it was a different jurisdiction. That began to change, and again, one reason was there were no automated systems then. There were a lot of, like I said, no texting and no communication. Yeah. That has gotten better to the extent that today, in the city of L.A. and the county, there's something like 70% less homicides than you had 35 years ago.
Yeah, and I was saying earlier, I think I'm answering one question because I said 1979, 83, there's this especially in California, all this serial killing going on. But the reason I would imagine is because it was easier to get away with. I was going, what's going on in the world that there's so many serial killers? But then again, California was the hotbed for bikinis, women, Sunset Boulevard, drinking, drugs. And it just, people would flock to that place. And then if someone has no job and, maybe have to go to crime. So I thought it probably became pretty easy for someone to say, I'm just going to kill for money.
Well, if they're sick too, right?
Yeah. Well, a crazy psychopath.
Yeah, they're beyond sociopath. You look at all of these, obviously they're all sociopaths, but they're also psychopaths. I mean, sociopaths, there's a lot of sociopaths running around loose. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
They're not all serial killers. Psychopath is a little different. That killing doesn't bother them. They get off on it. Mm-hmm. How do you even digest that? I've been around for a long time. I can't imagine a human being thinking about doing those types of things.
Look how many crime scenes you've been on, and you fought in Vietnam, which you've said to us that was worse. What you saw in Vietnam doesn't compare to what you saw on the streets here in LA. But man, it just shows if you allow yourself, if you're a human being and you get emotionally involved in this thing, you have to somehow turn off a switch. Where this is a case, these are facts. I can't think about it other than go catch the guy who's doing it or girl. Yeah,
that's true, and you are that way or you're not. A lot of people worked homicide. I worked with some of them, and they shouldn't have been there in the first place. You go to the coroner's office, and it's not a pleasant thing to do to see somebody cut up. They're no longer a person, though. They're evidence. And I went there with one guy. I thought he wanted to be a homicide cop, and I told him what we're going to do when we got there. And you're getting that look, I don't know. He says, what does it smell like?
Yeah.
What does it feel? So I went there, and I'm getting stuff, looking at the victim and waiting for the pathologist to come in, and we're taking photographs and everything else. And I turn around, and he's facing this way, and he's in a corner like a little kid in school. Like sent to the corner, he's looking in the corner like this. I won't tell you his last name, but we call him Skip. Skip, over here. Well, I don't know if I want to... Skip, come on over here. He didn't want anything to do with it. That was the last time he was at the coroner's office. Some people just shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Some people shouldn't do what you do.
Yeah. I'm the guy that shouldn't do the investigating. I could not.
Well, you do other things.
I do other things,
and
right?
That's the way life is. Just because you see something on TV, that'd be kind of neat to get involved. It's not neat.
No.
It's messy. It sucks, right? Yeah. You don't like the smell. You don't like to see somebody cut up. Then don't do this. Mm-hmm. You have to. This is evidence now. If you don't look at this and know exactly what happened, you're not going to solve this case. Yeah. That person is still going to be out there busy killing people.
Yeah. I mean, that's what separates the great ones, the ones that can just do it and do it for multiple decades like you, Tom.
But I also think, Tommy, it's your base, too, of going your wife and your kid. You think about, okay, I'm at home now. That's work. This is home.
If you can shut it off. If you can.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's got something to do with it, and that's part of it. In fact, it's a big part of it. You can't get off work and worry about other things that you have no control over. That's just a lesson in life. Again, certain people are cut out to do certain things, and if you can't do it, get out. The first thing I would think of would be sociopath. Sociopath is someone who basically has no conscience. You add a little narcissism to that, which is common for a sociopath, and you have someone like an OJ Simpson. When I first met him, it took me maybe 10 seconds to figure out that he is certainly a narcissist. If he's a narcissist, a true one is, and it was very obvious, he wants to be in charge. Now, am I going to have a problem with that? No. You want to be in charge, you're in charge. With Simpson, it worked because he helped me with my searches when we searched his home, and he told me that he was wearing certain clothes that obviously he wasn't. It went to the identification of a pair of shoes he was wearing that I impounded, that he said I could have because they were size 12. Well, unbeknownst to him, bloody footwear impressions at the scene were size 12. So I talked him out of those shoes. He says, yes. So I booked him as evidence. That proved through his own admission that he is size 12. That's circumstantial evidence. But if those shoes were size 10, it would be exculpatory. He might have walked otherwise. But he walked anyway. But you couldn't have used that type of stuff. So that's the thing with a sociopath. It's also true with serial killers. I believe all serial killers are sociopaths to one degree or another. Now, there's something like 5 million sociopaths. I think most psychiatrists and psychologists would tell you that about 5% of the American public are sociopaths. Doesn't mean they're all serial killers.
Right.
Politicians, there's a lot of them who are sociopaths. Leaders, billionaires of business that have been in the news lately, probably a little sociopath there. A lower level sociopath, who knows? The entertainment industry all around here. There's some sociopaths in the entertainment industry. They're not all serial killers.
Yeah.
But serial killers do have that in common. And you take that into consideration.
They have to be. I mean,
sure.
That you have to be a sociopath to do this.
There's no guilt at all in any of them. They reason in their own mind why they're doing this. The reasons vary. But they all will tell you some reason if they'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Many don't, but many have over the years opened up.
You've interviewed so many of them. Do they always try to outsmart you or think that they can stay one step ahead of you? Is that a game for them to see if they can outmaneuver Tom Lange?
Well, it's not just me. There are those who do that. The personalities vary. You can have a make serial killer. That happen, but they're still killers. You could have hardcore people who are highly intelligent. You could have a Skid Row stabber who had about a 68 IQ. You can turn around and have someone else like Ted Bundy who was at a very high IQ. They're still the same thing. They're still killers, and they kill for different reasons. Mm-hmm. They have different motivations. Who knows what goes on between the ears in their head? I mean, they're all different. Yeah. If you can gain their confidence, sometimes they'll open up. It just depends. Some will, some won't.
Right. And your job is then determine if that's the path to take them down or not. And that we'll get into that too.
The people talk about interrogations too. There's a difference between an interrogation and an interview. An interrogation is you're going at them. You may be banging on the desk or yelling at them or something else. Very accusatory. Usually that will not work, especially in a serial killer. So you go the interview route, which is I'm trying to glean inconsistencies, trying to get your confidence. I'm here because I got a job to do. I don't have a choice. I got these bodies here. Right. You got you. I got this. I got that. Could you help us out? It worked with Simpson, and he gave us evidence. He gave it up that shows clearly he was the killer. Well, all the rest is up to the jury. I'm not the jury. I'm not the judge. I'm not the media. I'm not the defense lawyers. All I can do is my job with the evidence, give it to you, and there you go. But if you can gain the confidence of these people, and sometime you can, you do it through an interview, not an interrogation, because that person will invoke and you won't get anything.
You know, I don't know if Tom Lange found the most infamous cases in Los Angeles or if they found him, but again and again, he ended up at the center of cases that later became the documentaries, the movies, the TV shows, the books. You've seen them, you've read them, you've heard about them. Now, one of the most brutal cases was the Wonderland killings in the Hollywood Hills. Eddie Nash was known as one of the most powerful cocaine dealers in all of LA and West Hollywood. He owned clubs, he had money, he had muscle, and fear all around him. And one of the people that was kind of in his world was porn star John Holmes, a man drowning in debt, drugs, and bad decisions. And what followed was one of the most savage crime scenes in Los Angeles crime history. This thing was absolutely brutal. And in the end of this thing, not one single person did 1 hour of prison time for the actual killings. The scene that Tom Lange walked into was so horrific that his partner told him when he arrived, put your galoshes on.
Yeah, well, he got 5 people with their heads bashed in. Blood was everywhere. Someone did make that comment. I think it was one of the detectives that was there from Hollywood. And then I repeated the same thing to Bob Susan, my partner, when he showed up. But it was very messy, and we knew we were going to be there a long time, and we were there for over 30 hours, just at the crime scene initially.
Insane.
And is it hard to, their faces are so bashed in to identify? How do you have the light? Did they have their license on? How do you find? Because I understand when you're bashed, broken bones in your face, you can't tell who a person, what they look like.
You're right. And these were intentionally headshots. with one exception, and that would probably be Billy Deverell, who was upstairs and actually fought back. But the other four, they were all headshots, and for a reason. This is somebody is sending a message, and they wanted it to be just like you said, unrecognizable.
Right.
And I would say that Ron Launius, lying in bed, was struck numerous times, and his skull was just in pieces. And you can see the pieces. The woman upstairs, her head was actually flat. I mean, it was as flat as this piece right here. You couldn't tell anything about recognizing her at all. And that was all on purpose. There's no doubt in my mind.
Sending a message, without a doubt. Yeah, you don't mess with Eddie Nash back then. I mean, he was a bad dude. And
if you're in a gang, don't you think someone in there has a gun? Or is it done so secretly?
Well, it was early morning.
Well, it's early morning, and they were all under the influence. They were all blasted from the
they're
night
all cokeheads.
before.
Okay,
They're all out of it. And Billy was the only one that got up and tried to do anything. But you've got 4 or 5 people in there with murder on their minds, and that's it, with lead pipes, and you're not gonna do anything. You're not gonna stop them. I didn't actually bring it myself. We had a photography unit there, as always happens at crime scenes. You have a photographer there. Sometimes they would have a camera, sometimes they wouldn't. Before, at crime scenes, you are going to photograph everything that you're going to photograph. This particular incident, if you have 3 levels where there's action, you got 5 victims, with all sorts of evidence, you're going to have a whole lot of photographs. I mean, this case probably had over 1,000 photographs of the crime scene. But as we're preparing to do this, one of the photographers said, "Hey, by the way, I've got a video camera in the van if you're interested." And I'm thinking that, well, we've never done that. We wouldn't want to do that. But then I got to thinking, boy, with all these victims in 3 different levels, all this evidence, that might look pretty good in front of a jury, but it's never been done. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, can we really do this? And then I thought, well, why not? Let's do it, and we'll find out later whether we can do it or not. So I said, yeah, well, let's try it. Well, back then, you had these big, heavy cables, and it was a shoulder-mounted camera, and you had big lights, and you had to walk all this stuff, and you had to, it was a pain in the butt. Today, you probably wouldn't, it's a lot easier today, but back then you'd have to move things and everything else, and so there was a concern that the cable might get in the way, the lighting might get in the way, but why don't we just go ahead and try it and see what happens? And so I said, all right, let's go ahead and do it. Put your camera and bring it in. And what we did, we used 2 or 3 people to kind of clear the way without moving anything on the crime scene, because there's no sense in photographing or videotaping the crime scene unless if you move everything. You want everything in a pristine condition the way it was found initially to show as evidence. And you have to be able to testify nothing was moved. This is exactly the way things were found, and you take it from there. So you want all of this photographed. So we did the photography, but then we did the video also. And it showed the relationship between the victims, where the victims were found, and all of the evidence. We were able to point out all of these things. I did the narration all the way through, but while I did it, I was able to get a couple of criminalists to comment on some things that were found. Little blood on a light switch, a couple of other things that were of interest, and it became evidentiary later. Turns out this was the first video crime scene video of a murder that was entered into evidence in a murder trial in the state of California. So it was new.
And John Holmes is going, we use that for work.
Right.
That's the same
That's
camcorder.
funny, Kato.
No, but, so Tom, this is a question. Who's the person that calls it in? And they immediately, are they giving their name? Who calls in a crime like that? Because it's Wonderland, it's private area. So you got to think the person that calls in might be involved, or how do we get the first call?
Okay, the first call, a young man was next door. First, let me tell you where this happened. The entrance to the 8763 Wonderland is only like 10 feet away from their neighbors. They were facing one another with the little short stairwells going up. And you could actually, from here to that wall, which is about 7-8 feet away, see somebody very easily. So they were moving someone out of the neighbors next door, and the one mover thought he heard somebody moan because he looked over across from away and saw that the door was ajar at 8763. And he looked across, and he thought he heard somebody moan, and the door was cracked open. So he went over and peeked in, and he looked a little bit. And he saw one of the victims, Barbara Richardson, lying off with her head smashed in. It was pretty obvious it was a crime scene to him. And he ran back down in and he called the police.
Sure.
A young man named Bruce Fisher.
Okay.
He called it in, and when he was told to stand out front, stay away, and everything else. When the police first arrived, he was standing out front, and the police pulled up, and just as you said, they approached him, and he said, "Yeah, I called or something." For whatever reason, for whatever was going through the officer's mind, they handcuffed him, which is not a dumb thing to do. It's actually a pretty smart thing to do when you think about it, because you don't know what you have at a crime scene. So until things get straightened out and you apologize, and it's much easier to apologize.
Right.
But if you've got 5 people like that, you don't know if this person's involved or not.
Right.
But unfortunately, the young man, a nice young man, he was an African-American. And he says, "Wouldn't you know it, I'm the only African-American here, and I'm the only guy standing around with handcuffs on." Which, at least he had kind of a sense of humor.
Probably needed a little levity at that point.
You start at the crime scene, and you're not in a hurry to do anything. That's phase one, and you only get one shot at that crime scene. I've never been to a homicide scene that I haven't returned to, but it's that first time out that you need to get everything initially. And so if you have to spend 3 or 4 hours there, if you got to spend, in this case, 30 hours there, that's exactly what you do, and you make sure that everything is thoroughly documented. The evidence is taken, but then the area is secured in order for you to return at another time, and that's what happened here. You're not really interested in what might happen tomorrow or the next day. You got to deal with what's in front of you first. Anything like this is going to be a high publicity case. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be contacting you. There's going to be a lot of people that you're going to find out about in contact. While we're at the crime scene, people were actually calling in and asking for one of the victims. And Bob would answer the phone, see if they could find out who they were, jot their names down. And so we're starting right there at the crime scene, just picking up the phone, and somebody called in, and he was in jail in Arizona, a fellow by the name of Cherokee. And Bob answered the phone, and he says, "What the F you want?" And he says, "Well, this is Cherokee. I'm in Arizona, and I got busted, and there's Billy there." And he said, Bob said, "Well, Billy's busy. What's your name?" He said, "Well, who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Bob. I was up the hill, and I'm watching the dogs." "Okay, well, tell Billy I'll be in there tomorrow." I said, "Well, where are you going to stand? Where are you going to stay when you get here?" They're trying to get information out of him. So we got 2 or 3 calls like that.
Wow.
So this is where you start. Jeez. You're interested in everybody. Mm-hmm. Just looking at the pad, now we hadn't anybody identified, but if you look at this pad and the amount of narcotics and everything else and the way they were killed, this isn't just a family having a family outing or something. There's a lot more to it. So everything is evidence. That's how you look at it.
And obviously these people killed before, because no one goes in with a lead. I mean, a gun is a shoot, done.
Yeah.
Lead pipe, you're watching them bleed to death, so you're used to something.
Well, that sends message. And then we didn't know until we found a little indentation. And the stairwell is very narrow. And going up the stairwell, somebody was obviously swinging a pipe, and it hit the side of the wall, and it left an indentation. You can see the striation marks. Mm-hmm. So we excised that out of the wall, and that pretty much said, looks like probably a lead pipe, and obviously that's what it turned out to be. Mm-hmm. And again, this is all about the message. Like you said, if you had a gunshot wound, we just want to get rid of these people, and we'd shoot them in the head, and it's a payoff. No, this is a personal message. Yeah. There's no question.
Right, because they took a shot at his bodyguard. They put a gun in Eddie Nash's mouth. And this is a guy you don't want to mess with. Yeah. So I bet, message delivered. obviously to you guys that this was more than just some random attack. Ron Lanius, kind of the leader of the Wonderland Gang, Eddie Nash, already kind of notorious in LA at the time. The coke scene had just started. Were any of these guys under your radar already? Anybody from the Wonderland Gang, or was Nash in and out of trouble? Had you been to his clubs, or as you started diving into this, were these new people to you?
Well, initially, we usually, if you're working homicide, you don't get involved until it's over,
But I meant the LAPD in general.
Yeah, no, they knew who Nash was. He had, I believe, 7 different nightclubs going back several years. He has been surveilled by LA sheriffs. In fact, so was the Wonderland Gang the night before the murders. They were actually watching the Wonderland house. They were out front. But Nash had a background for dealing drugs. He'd been in certain arrests, and anybody associated with him, he was known as a big-time dealer. A lot of organized crime people were attached to him. He ran the clubs as he had different clubs for different people. He had gay clubs. He had clubs where they dealt narcotics out of directly. He had young people's clubs that like young people. He had a Polynesian club, restaurant, all these different ones for any taste. I mean, anything. And part of these were all fronts for a lot of the narcotics activity. But he also dealt out of his house. And we found out that the sheriffs were also watching his house. And we were able to piggyback on a couple of warrants because of that.
Hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Man, it's always great hearing his voice, isn't it? If you want the conversations, the full episodes that I pulled these clips from, just jump into our archive. Plus, I'll put some links in the episode description here, because there is nobody like Tom Lange. OJ Simpson, Wonderland killings, serial killers, the darkest corners of Los Angeles crime. He walked into them, and that is why the Tom Lange files matter. He is the OG. He's a legend to us, because this isn't theory that he brings you. This isn't internet noise. This is the views from inside homicide cases, the most high-profile ones from one of the most important detectives that ever worked for LAPD. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Load me up with comments. We're switching to 2 episodes weekly, so come along for the ride with us. It's happening in the next few weeks. For K-Train, Kato Kaelin, I'm Tom Zenner. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will see you very, very soon.